Every year there are players out there that get overhyped and then they end up underwhelming. But sometimes a player isn't hyped up enough and you straight miss the explosion. But when it comes to fantasy football, it's all about timing. You want that explosion to happen in your lineup. And with the way things are lining up here in 2025, for the players we're talking about here today, the explosion could be coming. What is going on, Headliner Nation? Hopefully everyone is doing well out there today. Welcome to Jurassic Park. I don't know if the microphone's picking this up or not, but there are more bird noises going on right now behind me than I have ever heard in my entire life. I don't know if a pterodactyl is about to fly out of one of these trees. I have no idea what the hell's going on out here in Arizona. But as long as I can make it through today's video, we're going to talk about how much some name value really plays a part in the game of fantasy football. Some people out there that play this game just can't shake the stench of a player's past production or lack thereof. Some of the players just play on a team that just make you gag every time you think about drafting a player from that team. But if you truly want to be good at this game, you need to be able to look at the big picture. You really don't want to write off a player until you've looked at everything each and every year. Now, if you do that and you look at everything and it still smells like your teenager's sweaty gym clothes, yeah, just write that dude off and just let's pay attention to him next year. But speaking of looking at the big picture, that's where the 2025 Fantasy Football Draft Guide comes into play. Our draft guide is stocked with everything that you need to be successful in the game of fantasy football. Maybe you don't have a whole lot of time to do a whole lot of research. That's what we're here for. It's rankings, sleepers, breakouts, busts, injury analysis, strength of schedule, offensive line rankings, whatever it is you need, we have you covered in our draft guide. Now, it is already available right now at tfhdraftguide.com. There's already content up in the draft guide. It's a little bit early. We know that, but we do that on purpose because between now and week 1 of the NFL season, we can add content and update content. So no matter when you log in, you have the most up-to-date information. So if you're trying to find a way to mushroom stamp your opponents this year in fantasy football, head over to tfhdraftguide.com and get yourself a draft guide right now. But all right, let's go ahead and dive into a few of the names in today's show. Some names that you may hear and be like, Jake, dude, I don't want any of those guys. But just listen to the big picture, and maybe by the end of this show, you may be on the bandwagon. Now, the first player up is DeAndre Swift, running back of the Chicago Bears. His current highest finish in fantasy football is the running back 18 overall in his career, and I get it. The guy has been hyped multiple years in his career, but has never really lived up to that hype. Now he enters into 2025 and is sitting as the consensus RB26 as of right now in the consensus rankings. Now, there's also the fact that he plays for the Bears, and they've been a fantasy disappointment for years, but there is so much to look forward to here in 2025 for DeAndre Swift. First off, his price on draft day. As the current RB26, it's going to give him a projected ADP into the 6th round. How about the fact that they have a new head coach in Chicago, in Ben Johnson, the former Detroit Lions offensive coordinator? What did he do the last couple of years in Detroit? Run the football a ton and put points up on the board. This will be the best offense that DeAndre Swift has played in outside of the 1 year he was in Philadelphia. But then we get to the health and availability situation. It's something he just wasn't known for the first 3 years of his career. However, over the last 2 seasons, he's played in at least 15 games and had at least 268 touches in each season. So now that we have determined that he's going to be cheap on draft day, he has an offensive-minded head coach once again, and he's been able to stay on the field more here as of late. But now, we have to take into account that he's running behind the most improved offensive line in the NFL. This offseason, the Bears brought in Joe Thuney, Drew Dahlman, and Jonah Jackson. But will he be going against stacked boxes in this offense? Hell nah, he is not going to be. Caleb Williams has DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, Luther Burden, Cole Kmet, and Colston Loveland. They're going to keep boxes empty with that passing game in Chicago. Now, there is the fact that Roschon Johnson could have a decent role in this offense, but it's not like Ben Johnson hasn't shown us in the past that he can have success with multiple running backs in the same backfield. Look at Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery here as of late. DeAndre Swift had 1,300 total yards and 6 total touchdowns in a worse situation last year, yet still finished as the running back 2019. Now things are infinitely better, and he's going to be the running back 26. It doesn't make sense. Given the cheaper price, it may be worth the chance that he explodes in 2025. Now, how about an incoming rookie, RJ Harvey, running back of the Denver Broncos? And it's always hard to say that an incoming rookie that was not drafted as a top 20 pick in the NFL draft is set to explode, but man, things are lining up nicely for RJ Harvey. He found himself in the perfect spot with Denver, who desperately needs a starting running back. RJ Harvey only has Audric Estime and Jaleel McLaughlin to compete with on this depth chart, and neither one of those guys are lead back capable. He should be able to take over this backfield easily, especially since we know this is the guy that Sean Payton really wanted in the NFL draft. Now, a lot of people want to remake the Sean Payton, Alvin Kamara connection, and this may not be that. However, Harvey is a workhorse running back with 4.4 speed and can catch passes out of the backfield. He's also going to be joining a Denver offense that in Bo Nix's rookie year was a top 10 scoring offense in the NFL. Now, we have pass catchers here in Denver, maybe not on the level of what we talked about in Chicago a few moments ago, but solid options in Denver. Cortland Sutton, Marvin Mims, Devon Vele, Troy Franklin, and newly added tight end Evan Ingram. But we can also say we have a mobile quarterback that's shown that he can tuck it and run if needed in Bo Nix. It's just another way to keep defenses guessing. But here's the cherry on top. Denver has a top 5 offensive line in the NFL. So you take that potential volume in a high-powered offense with pass-catching upside and a great offensive line, and it's just great for fantasy running backs. But there is one more thing that makes me love Harvey that a lot of people aren't talking about. It's the fact that he's a former quarterback, a former high school quarterback who was recruited to play quarterback at Virginia in college. He has the ability to read defenses like a quarterback. Yes, he ended up transferring and becoming a running back, but he understands what everyone is supposed to be doing on the field, and it helps him find holes and make big plays. Sure, there is some unknown with him being a rookie, but he sure has the opportunity to explode in 2025. How about Josh Palmer, wide receiver for now the Buffalo Bills? His highest fantasy finish of his career has been wide receiver 41, but anyone who's been here for multiple years knows that I am a true believer in Josh Palmer. It just hasn't come to fruition thus far. He hasn't been able to stay healthy when he was in LA, but now he gets a fresh start in Buffalo. He joins one of the best overall offenses in the NFL and a team in which he could win a fairly large target share in. Palmer is not some old washed veteran. He's only 25 years old, and Buffalo just gave him one of the highest free agent wide receiver contracts this offseason. He has the talent to be a top-tier wide receiver in the NFL. Talent has never been the issue. He needs to stay healthy and get consistent targets. If that happens, this dude may be drafted super late, but he's going to finish as a top 20 fantasy wide receiver. Everyone has basically all but forgotten about him, though. Most drafts, he's probably going to go undrafted, but he has the potential of being the wide receiver 1 in Buffalo. Now, no, I haven't forgotten about Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, or Dalton Kincaid, but Palmer has the ability to be their true number 1 wide receiver. Being that he's going so late, there is little to no risk in grabbing him in the last round of your fantasy draft. With the potential opportunity in this Buffalo offense, he could be a huge surprise and explode for people in 2025. But how about a quarterback? Let's talk about Bryce Young in Carolina. His highest fantasy finish is QB 20, but he's had a rough start to his career, being benched, lack of production, lack of weapons, bad play calling. He's had it all in his short career. But we cannot ignore what he did towards the end of 2024. He not only got his job back, but from week 13 on last season, Bryce Young was the QB 6 overall in fantasy football. Over that span, he averaged 21 fantasy points per game and outscored Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix. It took a while, but it seems like the Dave Canellis offense finally clicked and we saw the improvements on the field. Now we enter 2025, and Carolina just added yet another weapon in arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL draft in Tedoroa McMillan out of Arizona. That's going to give Bryce Young a solid trio of McMillan, Leggett, and Thielen. but they added another piece that I think is really being overlooked in wide receiver Jimmy Horn. I would not be surprised if he ends up being a big part of this offense as well in 2025. We know the Carolina offensive line is much improved, a top 12 offensive line right now in the NFL. They also have a very capable run game with Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle. Now, I get that not many people in a normal one quarterback league are going to want to enter their season with Bryce Young being their QB1. I get it. There are just too many other high tier options. But if you're in a 2 quarterback league or a super flex league, Bryce Young could be a huge discount for you this year. It's not like he needs to go out and average 21 fantasy points per game to be viable. Even if he only averaged 16 fantasy points per game over the season, it's going to make him a top 15 option at the position. Now, if he can pick up where he left off, dude could explode. Which takes us to a tight end. How about Brenton Strange of the Jacksonville Jaguars? Now, his highest fantasy finish has been tight end 31, but obviously he really hasn't had much of a chance over his short career either. But now with Evan Ingram gone to Denver, now is the time for Brenton Strange. He's capable of making plays down the field and in the red zone, but the biggest positive change in Jacksonville is the change to Liam Cohen as their head coach. He comes over from Tampa, and we saw what they've done there as of late and how they turned around the career of Baker Mayfield. This has to be a huge benefit to Trevor Lawrence. There are also other high-tier offensive weapons that are going to demand the bulk of the defensive attention. Teams are going to be forced to pay attention to Brian Thomas Jr., Travis Hunter, even the run game with Travis Etienne or Tank Bigsby. Brenton Strange is going to be the dude on the field, running free, and potentially racking up touchdowns. Now, the crazy part is he's the current tight end 28 in the consensus rankings and will go undrafted in a lot of drafts. So typically, this is how I handle the tight end position. If I don't end up with one of the top tier guys, usually I'll grab 2 guys late and just hope that one of them pans out. This year, one of those guys I'm grabbing late is Brenton Strange. At this time last season, that name for me was Jonnu Smith, and we saw how that worked out in 2024. I just can't help but think in this new offense and the chance that he has at targets, he could absolutely explode. Now, I wanted to add in a couple wild card plays as well. One guy who's going extremely late, more of like a lottery ticket, and the other guy a little bit more well-known, going a little bit earlier, but being criminally slept on right now. Now, for the lottery ticket play, it's Kahan Booty of the New England Patriots. His highest finish is wide receiver 61 in his short career. And this one, like I said, a little bit more of a wing and a prayer. But depending how the rest of the offseason goes, he could be in line for huge targets. We have newly acquired wide receiver Stephon Diggs hanging with Cardi B and handing out who knows what on boats somewhere instead of being at OTAs. Plus, we also know he's coming off a major injury. Jalen Polk and Javon Baker, they can't seem to hold on to the ball in camp. Demario Douglas, Mac Hollins, and Kendrick Bourne, they're solid wide receivers, but they're not difference makers. Now, there's a lot of promise in third-round rookie wide receiver Kyle Williams, but he's still a rookie coming into the league. The fact is this: roles and targets are up for grabs in New England. Kahan Booty was the most explosive wide receiver in New England last year towards the end of the season. Now he's entering his 3rd year, and he knows he needs to do something, otherwise he's going to fade off into nothingness in the NFL. We have a new offense coming into New England with new head coach Mike Vrabel, but that is nothing new to Booty. He has had a different offensive coordinator every single year of his college and NFL career. We also need to remember that he was a 5-star recruit, recruited as the number 2 wide receiver in the country going to LSU. He set SEC records for 14 catches and 308 yards in just one game against Ole Miss. He has the talent. He has the ability. He just needs the opportunity. Now, unfortunately, New England isn't some offensive juggernaut that's going to provide a bunch of scoring opportunities to their wide receivers. But if Kahan Booty can earn a role and he gains momentum throughout this offseason, he could be an absolute steal on draft day and could potentially explode on your fantasy football roster. Which means we get to the last player in the show, and it's Jerry Jeudy, wide receiver of the Cleveland Browns. His best finish was wide receiver 15, and that was actually last year. But what's crazy to me is why he isn't ranked higher this year. And a lot of it probably has to do with the fact that 25% of his season-long scoring came in just 2 games last year. But despite the finish, he's still currently the wide receiver 34 in consensus rankings. That's going to make his projected ADP right around the 7th round. But is it just me, Or does it seem like he's set up to succeed more this year than last year? Now, maybe not from a target perspective. He had 145 targets last year. That is great, but we all know it's about catchable targets, not total targets. Jerry Jeudy had a catchable target rate of 71.5%. That's good enough to only be the wide receiver 45 in the NFL. But we know he enters this year as the clear wide receiver 1 on the team in Cleveland. Cedric Tillman is a great deep threat, but their current wide receiver 3 is James Thrash. And if I had to guess, most people out there don't even know who the hell he is. Now, sure, David Njoku is still going to be used heavily, but there is nothing standing in the way of Jerry Jeudy once again getting huge volume in this offense. Now, obviously, we don't know who the quarterback is going to be. It could be Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, Dylan Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders, maybe even Deshaun Watson at some point. Well, okay, so we know somewhat. It's not going to be Kenny Pickett. That dude blows. And more than likely, it won't be Deshaun Watson. He looked like he was washed before his second Achilles injury. But it could be any of the other 3, and that wouldn't be a bad thing for Jerry Jeudy. Between the potential quarterback play, the targets available, and the draft day price, Jerry Jeudy could be a huge sleeper and could explode in your fantasy football lineup. All right, so there you have a few players that could explode in 2025. Did any of these players pop up on your radar just a little bit now? I want to know down below in the comment section. Remember, this is an interactive fantasy football community. I want to talk to you, the viewer, down below in the comment section. This is not one of those channels where somebody sits in front of a camera and acts like he's 10 times smarter than everyone watching the video. Those channels are stupid. This one right here is all about community. So if that's what you're looking for, you found your home at Headliner Nation. Be sure to hit the subscribe button if you're not already subscribed. Then, if you haven't hit the like button, first off, why the hell not? Second off, please do so. It definitely helps us here in the off season. But all right, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here for the day. I'm going to make sure that I don't get swooped up by some ginormous bird behind me. Hopefully you have a great rest of your day, but most importantly, do your part to make the world a better place.